Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review, and today we are featuring the Marvel Legends X-Men Vulcan. Alright, so this figure is new, and it's part of the Bone Breaker Build-A-Figure wave. So you collect 6 of the 7 figures in the wave to construct Bone Breaker. So I have all the figures minus Maggot. I'm expecting them in the mail later today from Amazon. So once I have him, I'll have all the pieces needed and we can assemble Bone Breaker. But until then, be on the lookout for reviews on these other figures. I've reviewed Wolverine, Havoc, and Sabretooth. I recently filmed Darwin, and I'll do Siren, and hopefully I'll do Maggot later today. So keep an eye out on those reviews. Alright, so we have Marvel's Vulcan. So when it comes to X-Men characters, you know, unless you're a longtime X-Men reader of the comic books, you're going to be unfamiliar with some of these characters. Vulcan, he's not necessarily a heavyweight mainstay of the X-Men roster. If you're a fan, though, of the comic books, you'll recognize him. He's been in some prominent stories. Vulcan was first introduced back in X-Men Deadly Genesis #1 way back. I think it was like almost 16 years ago in 2006. So what makes him interesting is that he's the third Summers brother. For a long time in the X-Men comic books, there was always rumor that there was a third Summers brother. You know, the other two famous Summer brothers, there's Cyclops, leader of the X-Men, and there's also Alex Summers, aka Havoc. So much later down the road, they introduced Gabriel Summers, aka Vulcan. His storyline, he was kind of more so centric to like the X-Men adventures that are in space. If you're a longtime reader of X-Men, you'll recognize the different storylines. It always seems like, you know, in addition to having, you know, the normal X-Men adventures going on Earth, there's always some team of X-Men where they're out in space, you know, dealing with like the Shire Empire or the Starjammers. And this is a character that's kind of born out of those kind of stories. You know, he played an important role in some of the big Marvel events, like Kingbreaker and War of Kings. And at one time he was even Emperor of the Shi'ar Empire. He was Emperor Vulcan. He's a little bit relevant nowadays. In the recent issues of the X-Men comic book Sword, he was kind of being manipulated by Abigail Brand to take on Storm in Challenge of the Throne on Arakko, aka Mars. But that's a lot of heavy-duty nerd stuff. You're here probably for the action figure, so I don't want to run off too much on a tangent. So let's talk about Vulcan. Wonderful artwork on the side. I believe this is done by artist David Nakayama. Here's a brief description of Vulcan. Vulcan sets his sights on total galactic conquest. Standing in his way are the X-Men, the Inhumans, the Kree, and his brother Havoc. So it seems like this bio is kind of running more off of his first initial foray into the Marvel Universe during like Deadly Genesis and like the rise and fall of the Shi'ar Empire storyline. But like I said, he's kind of relevant, appearing, you know, recently in some of the X-Men books. His mind is kind of broken right now. He's kind of seeing the ghosts of like some of his dead teammates. Alright, so here's the figure in tray. We have an extra set of hands for Vulcan up here, and they're opened up hands, whereas the stock hands are closed fists. And we also get the Build-A-Figure piece for Bone Breaker, and this is awesome. This is the upper torso for Bone Breaker, and it also comes with 2 extra hands. Bone Breaker's stock hands are the trigger fingers, as you can see right there, and the alternate hands are closed fists. Now here's something I'm going to suggest. All right, so if you are not familiar with this character, but if you are a customizer, I think this is a great deal. For one, you're going to get a great base action figure for any kind of custom you want to make. You just remove the belt and you have a really completely naked figure you could build off a custom out of. You know, if there's any superhero you want to make, this is a great base body to do it. Likewise, you're almost getting a bonus deal, because if you buy this for a custom, you get another torso here for another custom, plus the additional pieces like the chest harness and then the neck collar. So I think this is even if you don't know what this character is, or if you're unfamiliar with it, if you're a customizer, great figure to build off of. Excellent base body. All right, we have Vulcan here. He stands in at about, I'm gonna guess, 6 1/4. All right, a little over 6 1/2. Okay, so I'm wrong there. Let's get up close and personal with Mr. Vulcan, or Gabriel Summers. Amazing head sculpt right off the bat. That's really well done. I'm really impressed with some of the recent waves of the comic book centric Marvel Legend figures we've been getting. I think the face sculpts are a lot better than they've ever been. They look really well done. The sculpting is very crisp. The facial features are really well defined. He looks awesome. The hair is well done. Again, if you want to work off of customs, great generic head. You know, this isn't really, unless you know who Vulcan is, this doesn't really identify as anyone in particular. So if you wanted to make a custom, this would be a great head to work off of. A nice updated Marvel Legends body. Now what's kind of crazy is that as I'm looking at this video, as I'm filming it, the blue and red just look spectacular on camera. But if you're to see this figure in person, it's almost a very matte and flat finish. But for whatever reason, this guy is really photogenic and really takes to the lighting very well. You get some, if you're into fig photography, I think these colors just work really well under the right lighting conditions. A nice generic X-Men belt. And as you can see, you know, it's a very generic costume. In some ways, it almost kind of resembles the color scheme of, like, you know, Captain Marvel. Or even, like, I think Adam Warlock might have had a costume that kind of looks similar to this. But if you want to make customs, this is a great base body. I can't stress that enough. In terms of articulation, let's see how this guy moves. His head rotates. He looks down. That's very impressive. You can look up. Very impressive. Lot of range of motion for this guy. You know, great base body if you want to create a flyer. You know, right there. That's really awesome. He has a butterfly joint on the chest, as you can see. Hopefully mine aren't stuck. I say this all the time. I hate butterfly joints because half the time they don't want to move. But this guy, are they going to move? Yes, this one does. It allows for some extended range of motion, so he could kind of like move his chest inward a little, and then he can arch back a little, but it's a little tight on my figure, at least. A little stiff. I'm not sure if the joints are stuck. Arms on Vulcan rotate. Go up. Bicep cut. Oh, what's curious about this figure is that, so I reviewed the Darwin figure from this wave. Great figure also, but this one has an advantage over it. He has pinless elbows. So he has double pinned elbows, but the pins are hidden. So it's a very clean look. Ab crunch. This guy could crunch forward about that much, which is pretty good. Arch back, decent. The belt's a separate piece from the body, so you can ride up. And then you can see the waist cut, waist swivel. Now Darwin, it's a similar figure, but much thinner in the musculature. Darwin had an issue for me where he can't kick out sideways that far. I'm kind of curious if this guy suffers from the same problem. No, this guy kicks out a little bit higher. Not as high as I'd like, but it's somewhat. So he could kind of super kick out. Kicking forward, about there, about a right angle. Again, much like the elbows, pinless knees, double jointed, which is nice. It's a nice clean look. And then articulated ankles. And, he's a very standard Marvel Legends figure. But I like the body a lot. I think it's an updated body. And it just looks great. So, do you need this figure in your collection? If you are a fan of the X-Men comics, I would say yeah. He's an Omega level mutant, I believe, in terms of his power set. He's not as well known, publicly as Wolverine or Cyclops. But again, if you're an X-Men fan and a longtime X-Men fan of the comics, this is the third Summers brother. It was very rumored for a long time there was another Summers brother. I think at one time people assumed it was going to be Gambit. But then, they introduced the character of Vulcan. And, he's kind of a heavy hitter. And I kind of feel like he's a little underutilized. With someone with his abilities and with his Summers name, I think he should be much more prominently featured in the comic books than he is. But it's a great figure. I think it's worth the purchase, especially if you want to put together Bone Breaker. You're going to need this guy. Alright, so with that said, I'd give this guy probably on a scale of 1 to 10, easy 8.5 to a 9. I think he's awesome. Alright, so let's wrap this video up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber or viewer, thank you so much for your continued support. So, until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. Alright, later.